Hey everyone, welcome back. It's another episode of Three Uniques. Today I have on Zach Arend. Hi Zach, how are you doing today?
Hey Brenda, doing great.
That's amazing. So Zach, where are you calling in from today?
So I'm in Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay, and we were
Yeah,
just talking about before we press record that it's hot there.
very hot,
Yeah, we're
very
recording
hot.
in,
It's been
in the
cooling down, but
okay, well we're recording this episode in the summer, depending on when people listen to it.
yeah,
So Zach and I got connected because we're sort of on the same sort of pathways in life right now. Zach is a storyteller, he's a speaker, and he's a resonance coach. So there's the coaching tie-in between my business and his business. So Zach, a resonance coach. Like I always ask like my clients, like how does that resonate with you? A resonance to me is all about like sort of volume, tempo,
yeah,
music, right? Like music is all about resonance. So what's a resonance coach?
yeah.
How do you work with your
Well,
clients and what's that all about?
that the idea of resonance comes up a lot when I'm working with my clients. It's like the tuning fork, right? Like when
Yeah.
something's in resonance, it's in tune,
Hmm.
but dissonance, so there's a difference. And the work I do, I work with a lot of established and successful creative artists and makers, a lot of right-brained business owners,
Okay.
creatives. And I help them uncover what they really need by pressing pause, getting out of their head,
Hmm.
using practical business and self-awareness tools so they can be the leader they know they are.
Right.
So often business owners, they're always questioning, am I a good enough leader? Am I doing this right?
Hmm.
And I find that really what's going to serve them most is them getting back into resonance, back into alignment with who they really are, their values. Some of what you teach is very applicable, like their uniques, right? And letting that natural ability lead, because that's what got them there in the first place. They need to learn to trust it. So that's the work I get to do, and it's very fulfilling work.
I love how you mentioned it a few times. There's been some different references to it, but the people actually are like, I'm paraphrasing your words, but like whole, complete. They're actually already good at what they do, and your
Yeah,
role is to kind of just bring it out of them. But they actually know, kind of like they actually already have the answers.
yeah, that's well said. And but there's just stuff that limiting stories, limiting beliefs, interpretations, the story that we tell ourselves, right? It's either creating more of what they want or more of what they don't want. And when you can start to own that story, and things can get back into alignment really quickly. Yeah.
Very cool. So, was there a turning point in your life, in your career, that took you down this path that was like sort of like, this is my calling. This is what I'm like here
Yeah.
planning to do?
Well, that's an interesting question. I want to try to answer it succinctly because there's so much, right? Everything in life shapes where we are today.
Sure.
But if I really look back, I wouldn't have answered this a year ago. But the more I've looked back and gotten back in touch with some of my personal story, growing up at 11 years old, I was roping in the county fair rodeo.
Right.
But I never saw myself as a real cowboy. Like, we lived in a small town. My mom and dad owned a grocery store. We didn't have cattle or did any of the ranching stuff. And I didn't even really want to do the roping thing. It was my mom. She was really into it.
Yeah.
And so we're always at these rodeos. And one rodeo, I saw my really good friend Travis. He's standing behind the chutes. I watch him climb on the back of this giant horse, this Clydesdale horse, like the Budweiser
Yeah.
commercials.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he nods his head and the gate flies open. And I watch him ride the horse all the way to the buzzer, and the crowd's going nuts. They're cheering. And I just remember seeing that. And I'm like,
Wow.
that I want to do that. And my mom, she actually gets Travis's dad, Bruce Sturdy, to train me. And I'd hit the ground. The first Saturday I showed up for practice, I hit the ground 20 times. Next Saturday, 20 more times. And I remember Bruce told me, he's like, Zach, you're gonna have to slow things down and stay in the process. And 2 years goes by, and of working with Bruce, I broke my hand, collarbone, ankle, several concussions,
Wow.
and I still hadn't made it to the buzzer, the whole point of the thing. And so now I'm 16 and I'm at a rodeo again, and the song I remember playing is Thunderstruck by AC/DC. And I just remember that day because I got on the back of this horse, I nodded my head, and it was just like slow motion. Everything slowed down, just like Bruce told me, slow it down. And all of a sudden I hear the buzzer and the crowd's applauding. And then my mom is over in the stands and she's just going bananas, like, a good mom would be after watching her son hit the ground. So, and I go on to become two-time state champion. And so that's a story that I forgot about I went into my professional career
Hmm.
and got so tied up in who I ought to be and what other people expect of me. I forgot of my own resiliency and grit and
Yeah.
abilities to figure things out. And yeah, kind of like uncovered that story. I took it out of the closet, dusted it off, and it really does define everything I've done in my life. Now, it's been 18 years since I've gotten on the back of a horse. I
Right.
pretty much live in the city, but um there's still that theme of I love doing hard things, and naturally now I'm helping entrepreneurs on their wild rides of building a business, which isn't always easy either. So it's just a
I,
little bit of my DNA.
that's so cool. I love that. I actually did a post this morning on Instagram about that. It's like sort of not forgetting who you are and just like kind of going back to like, how did you get to where you are? Like, what's that story, that evolution of who you are today? And just remembering those, I think, incidences or episodes in time where it's like you've demonstrated leadership or, like you said, resiliency, fortitude, set a goal with intention and mastered the goal.
Yeah.
And we can do that at even like really young ages. Like we don't have to necessarily be like in our 40s or 50s or, thinking that, hey, if something doesn't go well in our job in our 20s, that we're not going to be successful again in our 30s. So I think it's a really great lesson to kind of go back and look at
Yeah.
those, like on your sort of like leadership timeline, right? All those different episodes of where you really stepped up and took on something bigger than yourself. So I think that's a great example, and I love how it threads into like kind of what you're doing today.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to get into your three uniques because I have more questions to ask you about like kind of like who you are, but I know a lot of it's going to come up when we talk about your
Yeah.
three uniques. So how about them? Go for it. Let's hear
Yeah. Well, I love the question. Thanks for asking. Like, I took the quiz, and
it.
and it that was cool because it kind of verified some of the work I've done over the last year. I remember this spring, I even sent an email to some of the people that's closest to me, and I didn't ask them that question,
Right.
but I kind of asked them that question, right?
Yep.
And I started parsing together how other people saw me, and one of the things I learned in that exercise is what we view as our uniques. We're the last people to see it usually. I don't know what your experience, like, because it's so normal to us,
Right.
where it's like easy. It's like, well, that's easy.
Yeah.
But everybody else sees it as like, oh my God, I wish I could, like, he's so good at that, or she's so good at that. And so what I learned and what I landed on, my three uniques, one is, and I've been told just how I have a way of courageously drawing people out, entering the danger, asking the tough questions that really, I think that's what's allowed me to be a coach, successful in coaching. And maybe I could just pause on this one. This one's
Right.
really important to me because it's actually, this unique is starting to turn into a whole leadership curriculum that I'm building out, and helping leaders revolutionize how they communicate with their team without rescuing them and coddling them. Because I see that so often. Um, Growing up, I was told you I was team roping, and that was when I first met Bruce. My mom sent me to his ranch for a week to learn how to team rope. I was supposed to work with him and his son on the ranch. And I remember she leaves and I'm in the kitchen. Travis and I just finished up a bite to eat. Bruce comes in the kitchen. He's like, all right, boys, go saddle up your horse. Meet me in the arena in 15 minutes. And he leaves. And I look over at Travis. I'm like, what did he say? Travis like, go get your horse, saddle him up. We're going to start practice. Well, my mom always saddled my horse. Like,
Oh, okay. So
I
this is
never,
like,
and so,
yeah.
well, Bruce didn't know that, and I sure as heck wasn't going to ask him. Like, he wasn't
No,
going to do it for
yeah.
me. And I remember having to figure that all out. And it was quite a thing, but I did it. I was a little feed bucket under the trailer that I used as a stool, and I saddled my horse, cinched it down, and I remember riding into the arena that day,
Hmm.
and I was sitting taller in the saddle, and there's something different, and my mom never had to saddle my horse again. And I like that for leadership. I think as leaders, if you have people that you're leading, ask more of them, expect more of them, just like Bruce did of me, because that's the best gift. I mean, imagine if Bruce would have saddled my horse for me. It would have put my life on a different trajectory. I think, like, that was so important to me. It was a gift, and we have that opportunity to, in how we speak to people, and stay with them, and not take the pressure off, but keep the pressure on, that
Yeah,
allows them to go find their own answers, and that makes them stronger
for sure.
and
Well, and
more.
and all
Yeah.
the things that you want out of, building this like strong, capable team, innovation, risk taking, calculated risk taking, whatever that looks like, you can actually employ more of that when you're leading them. It's interesting too because I think it's so relevant right now. Like when I read articles about the Great Resignation and people leaving,
Hmm.
obviously leaving for a multitude of reasons, but I think there's this little like there's a little bit of a quagmire dance going on right now between managers and employees. Employees have lots of choice and available to them, and they're leaving. Um, and the last 2 years, obviously, shift in workplace environments, all that sort of stuff has been challenging for a lot of organizations and individuals to navigate family responsibilities, etc. So employees have this huge opportunity to find, the ideal employer
Hmm.
that they want. And then the manager that's tasked with trying to retain those employees so that they're not leaving in this great resignation. I see them not leading. They're again, like you used the word before, sort of coddling, or maybe like, what can I do for you? Like how do we just like pad the room to make sure you don't leave? Like these employees are so
Yeah.
fragile. I'm like,
Yeah.
hang on a second. Remember the fact that everybody is sort of born into this world knowing, grounded, whole, complete, like individuals. So don't think that your employee can't handle being led, and being empowered and being tasked with bigger goals. And that don't manage your team out of fear that they're going to like walk out the door if
Hmm.
you ask them to take on something bigger than themselves.
Right.
They want leadership from you. They want the opportunity. They want the opportunity to grow and learn and stretch. And if you're padding the room so delicately, like they're just going to be like these little fragile, China dolls that,
Yeah.
at a moment's notice, they're just going to drop and leave the company. Well, they're just going to leave anyways.
Yeah. I agree. You said the word fragile, and that is where I think the biggest mistake and how there are some of the things going on in culture is teaching people that we're fragile, and it couldn't be farther from the truth. I mean, we're not only resilient, we're anti-fragile. There's a book called Anti-Fragile. I can't think of the author right now, but everything about that book says that human beings, we actually grow through adversity. Like we need
Yes.
demands placed on us
Right.
for us to unleash our potential. Like it won't come any other way.
Right.
And like that, I don't know, I just believe, and maybe this is my unique, but that's where the magic of life is, at the bottom of another mountain and living, building towards something, and asking more of yourself and each other, and toward a cause that has impact. So yeah.
I love
and
that.
and that's actually my second unique is there's something about, and I think just sharing my personal story, I crave living at the bottom of a mountain, meaning like always having something to climb, and for a while I think I saw that as a very daunting, heavy thing, a burden.
Right.
But the more you think about it, like nobody climbs Mount Everest for the hell of it. Like they do it because they want to the experience the journey. And
Right.
so when I say put yourself at the bottom of a new mountain, that's like you choose the mountain first of all,
Sure.
but then you do something that really max leverages all your uniques and who you are, and puts demands on you that allows you to play full out. And I think that is, I don't know. I think I love watching people do that because it's when we get to be our best. So that's my second unique, is just this
Okay.
growth mindset.
And for you, is there a habit, a practice, or a ritual that you do that just kind of keeps you looking for that
Yeah.
next mountain, keeps you climbing, keeps you in the journey and that growth and that exploration?
Yeah, this sounds strange maybe, but so Stephen Pressfield, I don't know if you've heard of who he is. He wrote a book called The War of Art, not the art of war, The War of Art.
Okay.
He's an author. He's written a lot of fiction. He wrote the Legend of Bagger Vance. It's a
Oh,
movie
yeah.
with, so he wrote it was first a book,
Yeah.
right? Um, and he wrote a book called War of the Art. And in this book, it's all about our enemy he calls resistance with a capital R.
Mm,
It's that inner critic, that voice that's constantly chattering at us, like, who do you think you are? You're
right.
too old, you're too young, you're not a good enough communicator, you're not doing enough. It's some version of not enough, right? And just kind of keeping you down, keeping you small. So that ritual you asked me about, I listen for resistance, and I want it in my life because it's actually an indicator that I'm moving in a direction that I'm being called to move in, because usually your resistance is never at its loudest than the moment you step into towards your dream, towards what you really want in your life. So I'm like, and Stephen Pressfield talks about this in his book. It's like that, if you're not hearing resistance, then you should be alarmed, because that means you're not playing to your potential. You're not at the bottom of a new mountain. So that's an indicator for me. I actually lean into it, and then I'll say often I invite it to the party. And it just helps me know that, I'm growing again. This is what growth feels like.
Right.
And I've reframed it, and it's really helped me.
Awesome. And your third
Yeah.
unique?
My third unique is just my ability to speak to people's greatness. And I wish this was more common. It's such a rarity to see people personally speaking to their own greatness, and speaking to others' greatness. We so often want to deflect and kind of argue against our greatness. And when I was riding saddle broncs in the rodeo, I was in college. I remember my first college rodeo. Like, I'm on my way to going pro, first college rodeo. It was a Monday after the 3-day event, and we were watching tape. As a team, we'd watch tape every Monday. Coach Cross wheels this TV on wheels, if you remember, those the VHS in the deck. And
So when you say tape, that's like replays, right?
yeah, we were watching tape, just like
Okay, got
football. You'd
got it.
watch the replay. Yeah, watching tape. And he gets to my ride, and we're watching it on TV, and you see the horse jump out, and one jump, two jump. Before you know it, you see me just getting ejected straight in the air, straight into a steel fence head first.
Wow.
And there I am Monday night with a big old black eye, and he just looks at me. He's like, "What happened?" And he rewinds it. He pushes play again. He pushes pause, and he points at the TV. And he's like, "Where's your head?" And I looked at him like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Where are you looking?" And I'm like, "Oh shoot, look right. I'm looking right at the fence." And he's like, "That's right where you went."
Oh,
And
I see. Yeah.
so what he dropped some, he liked to cuss a little bit. So he just like, "How many times I got to tell you to keep
Humor.
your eyes where you want to be?"
Mm,
And that's like, when I talk about speaking to greatness, it's all about what you want and you desire. And are you focused on that, or are you focused on all the things you're trying to avoid, all the problems and challenges and obstacles, all the things you don't want?
right.
Because when we can just commit to focusing on what we want, and as a coach, my job is to listen for what do you say you want, and then what are you saying is preventing you from having that. And then if we can break down those obstacles and clear your path, you have everything you need to make it a reality. And so that's my third unique, is just this idea of seeing people as powerful and speaking to their greatness.
Awesome. And so does this do you feel, because you did the quiz, you're on the podcast sharing your three uniques, would you say wholeheartedly that your three uniques are woven through the work that you do with your clients as like that resonance coach? Like everything that you're saying now as far as like what you've learned about yourself, you're also like sort of bringing forward with your clients?
Yeah. And that's what's really cool, is kind of uncovering who I am, what really lights me up, but now using that, like unapologetically using that. Because I remember years ago, I was a vice president of sales, this young executive, and I was the one walking around worried that, am I a good enough leader? Just waiting to be found out. Like, when are they going to find out? I really don't know what I'm doing, right?
Yeah.
And so I was just apologizing for who I was. I was always deferring to what they thought should be done, instead of like leading with what I believed to be true. And the more I got in touch with who I am, and then just let that out and just express that into my work, it's been so effortless. Like, that's when I'm like, there's something about doing this resonance thing.
Right.
It's so effortless. It comes so natural. And for the first time in my life, the results that were happening and coming to me it was like they were being attracted to me. Instead of me chasing after the things I wanted, they were chasing me. And I see this play out with so many of my clients now, because as I coach them in the way that I do, I don't know if they know that I'm doing this, but they
Now
move
after they listen to this podcast.
they move into their greatness. They start seeing like, oh yeah, that is what I want. And yeah, I'm telling myself a story of why I can't have it, and it's completely BS. And then it's just like game on. We start creating plans to move into that, and really cool things happen.
Awesome. That's so great.
Yeah.
So along the lines of your leadership journey, like I love the fact that you mentioned, you've got that sort of traditional leadership experience, VP of sales, sort of looking over your shoulders to make sure you're always doing things right. Is
Yeah.
there a time, either back then or even now recently, where you've received like the best advice? And then maybe an example of where you didn't receive like the best advice, like the worst advice.
Yeah. Well, it was what felt like the worst advice, but it turned out to be very good advice after
Okay.
reflecting on it.
Good twist.
Yeah, so I remember at this point I was the vice VP of sales, I had the title, and my wife and I, we just had a third daughter. Thea was newborn at home,
Mhm.
and I was on my way to the country club to have a drink with my CEO at the time, and we sit down and we're not even through our first bourbon. He looks at me, he's like, I got to make some changes to the team. And he basically said, look, I know the bonus and the executive ownership plan is important, but you're young. Instead of waiting 10 years, here's an early payout. And I just remember looking at him and saying, are you firing me?
Mm,
And because for the last 10 years, that was my identity, was all into this business and building
right.
this business. And it just was like, I did not see it coming. And several months go by and I get my review from the guy who replaces me. His name's Michael, and he's twice my age, twice my experience. And we sit down and he tells me, he's like, Zach, you're a good soldier, but that's not leadership.
Mm,
And are you kidding me? I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to be doing. I read all the books, right? To find out I was a good soldier. And then later that night, I called my best friend, Ben. And this was all in this like moment. And he told me, he's like, Zach, I've watched you these last several years, and it was like you're forcing things. It was kind of awkward. He said, if you would just trust who you are and stop trying to prove yourself,
right.
he said, I mean, you can't exactly say you've been enjoying these last 3 years. He's like, all the books you've read, the coaching you received, everything, and you're still not where you want to be. And that's when I realized that this idea of leadership, it
Mhm.
really does come from within. So kind of full circle.
Sure.
I was going to continue to be miserable if I continued to try to change myself to please everyone around me.
Right.
And that was just all of that crescendo was, oh my God, I'm going to have to own who I am and stop dancing to the beat of everybody else's drum. And that set me on the path of a lot of self-reflection. And really that was the catalyst that allowed me to become a coach, because I started seeing it in so many other people. I'm like, I can help. Not that people need my help. They're more
Right.
than capable, but I can be a guide on their journey to help them get there so much faster, because we've all been there. A lot of us have been there.
Yeah, well, and like you said, people are fully capable of doing it themselves, but sometimes we get a little stuck and we
Mm-hmm.
need some people to kind of give us that gentle nudge. And so if you've been there, done it, you can, help those people out that are kind of in that similar path as you. Great advice though. Like, I mean, there's a little bit of a sting to it as you like navigated through the story. And again, you're a fabulous storyteller. So I was just like, yeah, like, I mean, it was a couple different situations, either the CEO, your new boss, your best friend, all kind of giving you a little bit of harsh feedback, but needed, right? And then look
Yeah.
where it's taking you today. So from a goal standpoint, what's something that's going to be on the horizon? Like what do we are looking forward to with Zach, say in the next like 6 months, 12 months, 18 months?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm putting myself at the bottom of a new mountain again. As yeah, I'm wanting to start speaking more. So I'm working on putting together a media kit, and I'm working on a keynote. And so that's one thing. But then the second thing has really been on my heart for a while, is as I've coached a lot of my clients one-on-one. That's all I do, one-on-one. um it's funny, and maybe you've experienced this too, but it's like so much of the most personal things are kind of universal. Like you almost start, there's been days where I'm like, oh my gosh, I literally saw this in my previous client an hour ago, and here it is again, the same theme. And I've been wanting for a long time to launch more of a group coaching mastermind experience. I want to go on a journey with a group of people that are all wanting to, put themselves at the bottom of a new mountain, build their business, lean into who they know they are,
Right.
and do it together, and do it, leverage each other's strengths, um, and coach each other through that. And so that's what I'm building. I'm hoping a lot will be coming out here towards the end of August. I'm right in the middle of it, building it out and building all the websites and stuff. So that's what's on the
Exciting.
horizon for me. Yeah.
Exciting. Well, it'll be kind of around the time that this podcast probably comes out too. So that'll be
Yeah.
a good little leverage point for you. Um, Question for you, kind of my last sort of like ending question, but it's a good bookend question for today's session. If I was to give you a billboard and it could be anywhere in the world, what would you put on it and what would it say? Or sorry, where would
Mm.
you put it and what would it say?
Where would I put it? Well, I would put it where the most people would see it. So like off of an interstate or something.
Okay.
Um, what would it say? Play full out. Um, that is, there's a big difference between playing to win and playing not to lose.
Hmm.
And I want to see more people playing to win and no more of this just trying to play it safe. Like I like play full out.
Right.
And that would be what I'd want for everybody to see.
Awesome. That's so great.
Yeah.
Zach, thanks for so much for being on today and sharing your three uniques with us.
Thanks for having me, Brenda. This was fun.
And for everyone tuning in, I always say this at the end of my episodes is remember that there's 7.8 billion people on the planet. Get out there and share your three uniques. Take care, Zach.
Thanks, Brenda.